Well, hello. Oh, see, y'all talk back. I love that. How's everybody doing? See, I'm from the South, and every time you speak, people speak back, and you guys get it right away. I usually have to say, please. I'm saying hello. Say hello back. This is why I need to come back to Cincinnati, Chris. So first of all, listen, I want to tell you thank you, first and foremost, for inviting me and having me here this evening. Dr. Chris Lewis, I'm so inspired and humbled by the work that you do. I had a chance to meet Chris for the first time a couple hours ago before this event, and just hearing about the vision and the idea that this is now, what it has become, and the reality that I see before me now, and I see the history over the last 11 years, what you've accomplished is awe-inspiring. So congratulations, and continue to do the work, and I know that you will. I'd like to say thank you to Dr. Lofgren, who just introduced me. Thank you. Claudia, thank you for inviting me here. And thank you to all of you. So let's get started. I know I don't have a lot of time, and I want to say to you that I hail from the public speaking school of the 3 B's. And that is, be bright, be brief, be gone. I know y'all. By the way, I don't even know, do you guys have dancing here after the party usually, Chris? You have okay, good, because I want to get to some good dancing. If you are in this room, you have a heart for your fellow man. The well-being of others, obviously, and for Mother Africa. And because of that, we are kindred spirits. Because, you see, though I was not born in Africa, Africa was born in me. And I would dare say, in you as well. A few years ago, I had the tremendous good fortune of doing a show called Who Do You Think You Are? I don't know if you've seen the show before. Who do you think you are? My dear friend who's a comedian named Niecy Nash likes to call Who Do You Think You Are? Who the hell you think you're supposed to be? But it's one of my favorite shows. If you haven't seen the show, it's a show where they take entertainment professionals and you get a chance to trace your genealogy. And how that works from a production standpoint is they meet with you 5 months before shooting, and they'll sit down with you and they ask you everything you know about your family history. And then they tell you, go away. Don't ask any questions. And in my case, I put them in touch with my older brother, Frank, who's the family historian. The reason they don't want you to ask any questions is because when the cameras are rolling, they want to see a spontaneous reaction. So for me, it was fascinating because I found out on my mother's side, Maryland Underwood, that there's a whole line of free people of color in the Virginia South. I found out my 4 times great-grandfather, Delaware Scott, had 200 acres of land along the James River in 1780. So it was mind-blowing for a lot of different reasons. The Underwood side, on my father's side, I thought would be easier. You know, we would joke about, so it's Kerry Washington, Kerry Underwood. That's another thing. Now, wait a minute now. I can hear my wife now. Hold on now, brother. Hold on now. But I want to see, like, if Kerry Underwood, if we were cousins. It's funny because Kerry and I met. I actually had a chance to present her with one of her mini Grammys a couple of years ago. And we met, and I said, you know, I always joke that you're my cousin. She said, I always joke that you're my cousin. And I said, well, you know, we may be related. You know, your people probably owned my people. And she just went blank. And I said, it's okay. It's history. We don't have to be PC. It's okay. It's all right. It's not. We don't know if it happened or not, but it's okay if it did. Long story short, I thought the Underwood side would be easier to trace, and it wasn't. As it turned out, my family is from Marion, Alabama, and there were too many Underwoods from the plantations in Marion to really trace in terms of 100 or 200 years back. So we ended up doing the DNA testing. And the DNA testing obviously is very scientific and very specific. It took us all the way back, and I found out that my people were from Cameroon, West Africa. And my father, who is 83 now, was 80 years old at the time, this 3 years ago, had never been to Africa. He is the one who instilled in me the love of Africa. And he said he always wanted to go since he was a child. So we had the chance to take him with me. The 2 of us went to Africa and spent 2 days with these family members. They were able to trace down a young man named Eric Sanjowo, who grew up in this very small village called Babungo in Cameroon, West Africa. He had gone off to college, and 5 years prior to that, 8 years ago, somebody came around the college campus and asked for a DNA test, just do a swab and DNA test. So he did it. And that's how he was in the database, and that's how they found him. So Eric represents my 10th cousin, quite literally, scientifically, my 10th cousin. So for my father and I to go back to West Africa and to sit in this small hut, because it was a remote village. It was almost like going to a rainforest, and sit with these, quite literally, these family members, myself and my father, and Eric and his father. We understood that that represented our family lineage that was torn asunder, that was broken apart, literally 10 generations ago. And it was very profound. And at the end of filming that documentary of sorts, that episode of the show, they asked, what does it mean to you? And I said, that's when I thought about what I just shared with you. I wasn't born in Africa, but Africa was born in me. And when people ask, why would you want to go back to Africa? What difference does it make where you come from or where your family originates? Well, I always believe that when you know who you are, whether your background is negative or positive, knowing who you are breeds, at the very least, less confusion and clarity, and at the very best, confidence in who you are. A wise person once said, the only thing that makes one place more attractive to me than another is the quantity of heart I find in it. Africa has an embarrassment of riches with regard to heart and soul and natural resources. Africa is a huge continent, as you know, with 54 different countries in it, where many countries, including Tanzania, where I know you do all of your work, where they need our help with respect to infrastructure and education, improving the quality of life and health and garnering humanitarian resources. The need for that help is on the ground, doing the very work that Village Life has been doing since 2004. The great humanitarian and my favorite person in history, Dr. Martin Luther King, said, an individual has not started living until he can rise above the narrow confines of his individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity. Every man must decide whether he will walk in the light of creative altruism or the darkness of destructive selfishness. This is the judgment. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? I say all of this to say that I am honored, humbled, and privileged to be here this evening with all of you connected to and supportive of the Village Life Outreach Project, because you're doing the work, and you're doing it for the benefit of others. You are indeed walking in the light of creative altruism. When my new friend over here, Claudia, was kind enough to extend the invitation for this evening, I felt it necessary to do my due diligence and do a little research on the history of Village Life. I learned that since 2004, Village Life Outreach Project has united communities across cultures to build strategic partnerships that work to improve the quality of life, education, and health. I learned that your collaborations with communities throughout Cincinnati and the Serengeti region of Tanzania, East Africa, have created sustainable, and that's the operative word, sustainable solutions to the pressing needs of Tanzanians and unique and valuable learning opportunities for hundreds of Cincinnatians each year on the ground here. I learned that, and some of these stats have been mentioned already this evening, but they bear repeating. Roll call. I learned that you've built the Roche Health Center, the first ever access to permanent health care for a region of 20,000 people. I learned you built a school with your partners, Engineers Without Borders, built a water system with Engineers Without Borders to supply clean water to 7,000 people, treated over 13,000 patients in field clinics, distributed over 12,000 mosquito nets to prevent malaria, implemented a nutrition project that feeds 1,200 Tanzanian school children daily, started a safe motherhood intervention project to decrease death and sickness in mothers and babies. Are you kidding me? You have been and continue to do the work of improving the quality of life for your fellow human beings. It is absolutely commendable and noble, the values for which you stand. And it's not easy work. It's not easy work at all, the practical, hands-on work on the ground here or in Africa. It's not easy convincing others to join in your passion or your fight, whether you're convincing them to raise money or you're raising awareness. It's not easy. I know, because as Dr. Lofgren said, in 1989, I had the great fortune of being part of a group of artists that founded an organization called Artists for New South Africa. For 25 years, up until last year actually, we worked creatively and collaboratively for social change in the U.S. and Africa. It all started in a living room of Robert Guillaume. Do you all remember Benson? Benson, yeah. You can clap for Benson, yeah. But Robert Guillaume played the part of Benson, if you don't know. But it started in his living room in 1989. And for me, I had just finished doing a film for NBC called Murder in Mississippi. And it was about the 3 civil rights workers in 1964 who were killed during Freedom Summer: Mickey Schwerner, Andrew Goodman, and James Chaney. So I was already in a civil rights humanitarian frame of mind. And my dear friend Alfre Woodard, who's a phenomenal actress, said, listen, we're creating this organization right now. And of course, on the top of mind of everybody in the world was apartheid and Nelson Mandela and what was going on in South Africa. And she said, if we can find a way as a cadre of artists to somehow use this platform, and somebody puts a light or a camera or a microphone in your face, pitch your project, pitch your movie, pitch whatever you got to talk about, but then turn the conversation to remind people of what's happening in South Africa. And we did. So after apartheid was finally dismantled and Nelson Mandela was released from prison after 27 years the next year, our work at ANSA transitioned into our new mission, which was HIV awareness, which was to eliminate the social and economic inequities that were and are legacies of apartheid by empowering historically disenfranchised communities. We worked tirelessly and by the direction of Sharon Gelman to mitigate the societal impact of the HIV/AIDS pandemic, improve U.S. and South African government and corporate HIV/AIDS policies, decrease AIDS stigma, racism, and other prejudices, in addition to protecting human, civil, and voting rights, increasing electoral participation, and safeguarding democracy in both countries. So you see, what started off as a moral outrage against apartheid, this inhumane system of separatism or apartness, apartheid, which of course impacted humanity, inevitably shifted to the soul needs and undergirding of our fellow human beings. Over the years, and somewhere in the midst of all of our efforts with our South African brothers and sisters, South African President Nelson Mandela said, quote, "We will never forget those who stood by us in our darkest days. You have become a part of the progress we are making. We are strengthened by the knowledge that Artists for New South Africa will be with us." You know, you never know the difference you're making in the lives of others. Chris and I were talking about LA Law, and I remember when we started doing work with South Africa, visiting South Africa the first time, we met a man named Ahmad Kathrada, who was in prison with Nelson Mandela. And he met me, and he hugged me. And he said, "You must understand." Let me back up a little bit. When we were doing LA Law, I played an attorney on the show, and there was one episode we did where I wanted our law firm to disinvest in South Africa, and they wouldn't. So I had to take a stand. My character took a stand. Ahmad Kathrada said to me when I finally met him in South Africa, of course he'd been released from prison at that time, he said, "Because of what you did when we were in prison, we saw that episode, and we knew from that episode and other things we saw, but we knew that people had not forgotten us out there." So you never know the impact you'll have. You never know how you'll touch lives, whether it be in a grand political scale, whether it's a grand political scale or it's a personal moment like that, or the profundity of building a new school and hospital in Tanzania, or providing a child with the first meal they've had in days. So again, you see, we are kindred spirits. The beauty is that you don't necessarily have to go to Africa to do that, to make a difference. You can start here tonight. I know there'll be a conversation later about making your donation if you like. You can go to the website, I'm told, villagelifeoutreachproject.org. And I encourage all of you to have a good time tonight as we start dancing in a little bit. But also to continue, I urge you to continue your global humanitarianism. As those of you who have had the opportunity to travel to Tanzania can attest, as you participate in service learning activities and expand and grow in your knowledge of world issues, the lives you touch and the effect you have on those lives is immeasurable. And lastly, some of you may have heard this anecdote before, but I only heard this the other day, and it kind of blew me away because it speaks volumes. And it's a little story that an elderly man talks about as he's reminiscing about his life. And he says, "When I was a young man, I wanted to change the world. I found it was difficult to change the world, so I tried to change my nation. When I found I couldn't change the nation, I began to focus on my town. I couldn't change the town, and as an older man, I tried to change my family. Now, as an old man, I get it. I realize that the only thing I can change is myself. And suddenly I realized that if long ago I had changed myself, I could have made an impact on my family. My family and I could have made an impact on our town. Their impact could have changed the nation, and I could indeed have changed the world. Author unknown. The point is, I am, as I said, incredibly inspired by the untiring work of this organization. You've already got it figured out, because you are far beyond understanding the power of the individual to affect change in the collective. You are acutely adept in operating in the understanding that in turn the collective can indeed change the world. One building at a time, one village at a time, one student at a time, one child at a time. I'm very appreciative for all that you have done and continue to do, both here and abroad. You are truly an inspiration to me and to us all. God bless you, and thank you again for having me this evening.